Welcome to Set the Table. I'm your host, Peace Ike. In a world where shouting matches have replaced dialogue, we're creating something different, something human. For the past several years, I've been gathering complete strangers around dinner tables to talk about race, religion, politics, you name it. Now we're bringing those conversations to you, alongside insights from thought leaders and curious minds who are making sense of our divided world and showing us a better way to engage it. So pull up a chair. There's room for you at the table. Well, guys, welcome to this bonus unplanned episode of Set the Table. I've been meaning to get around to do this for a while to address the mystery of the missing podcast episodes, which kind of sounds like a book title or a movie title there, but many of you have noticed that episodes 2, 3, and 5 are no longer listed on the playlist. And you're not crazy. They're not there. And there's a reason they're not there. And I just wanted to do this very short recording to put that on the table, so to speak, and bring some clarity and clarification to why that is. Now, many of you who've been with me since the beginning of this podcast, you listened to episode 1, where I talked about the purpose of this podcast, why it's important, why it's personal. And in that episode, I said that I wanted this work to not just be constructive, but to be healing and reconciliatory. And I really meant it. If it wasn't serving a helpful purpose, I didn't want to do it. So it's important for me to be a person of integrity. And I came to a point where I truly felt that those episodes weren't serving a helpful purpose and that they were, in fact, increasing the frustration that many were having at this political stalemate, this political gridlock that we found ourselves in. Now, you guys know about Dinner and Discussion, the live dinner social experiment, if you will, that led to Set the Table. And here's the truth. There's just something special about breaking bread with people, sitting down with them, seeing them, looking at them face to face, that did not translate into podcast format. And I'm the first to admit that. And it's just that curse that comes with living in the digital age. So those things like the shared food, the shared hugs, the reconciliatory moments, even the safety of dialogue in a larger group, those are what made the dinners heart-filled and emotional and special. And the dinners really were an open gateway to progress naturally towards like deeper conversations and more existential topics like the meaning of life and purpose in God. And you know, we were able to do that on many of the episodes. And I just want to say, especially for those who are listening who were part of those episodes, you guys are awesome. Like, I had people say, I didn't think that these conversations could be had in such a civil manner. And it was you guys who demonstrated that possibility. And so I want to thank you that those episodes went as well as they could have. They were really, really well done. But as a whole, you know, the atmosphere that allowed that heart work to take place around the table, it's just difficult to emulate in podcast format. And so the podcast kind of became a spectator sport rather than a healing experiment, which is really what I wanted it to do. And so I deleted those episodes because they weren't really having the desired impact. Now, I did keep one up just so people could get a taste of what they were like. I still love dialoguing about politics and cultural issues, but the truth is that it's a superficial solution to a deeper problem. And so we would often kind of get stuck on these policy issues that weren't taking us to a deeper place. And, you know, I really believe our policy differences can only take us so far because at this point, there's so much distrust. There's so much unforgiveness between the left and the right that we're no longer listening for what the other person is intending to say. We're listening to confirm our bias against them. So there's a deeper existential problem that supersedes political differences. And I really want to focus on that. So just as an example, an anecdotal example, I was at an event this past weekend and there was a conversation happening around politics, or really around things that have been politicized. And one person was basically making the sentiment that this other person doesn't believe in science because they don't support certain interventions and they don't support certain scientists. And so the other person with the opposite viewpoint was like, well, what do you mean by believe? By believe, do you mean that I believe that some pharmaceutical companies have financial interests that can create conflicts of interest and bias and cause them to prioritize profits over public health? And well, yes, you're right, And he was like, and how about by science? By science, do you mean that I believe some studies can support one outcome and other studies can support the other? Well, yes. In fact, maybe you don't believe in science. And I'm using this as an example that we're not speaking the same language anymore. We're using the same words, but we're not speaking the same language because our words mean something entirely different depending on our own bias. And so all of the nuance is just lost in simple phrases like, you don't believe in science. So I kind of want to pull back from these policy things and figure out, like, why are we not able to hear each other anymore? Like, why are we literally speaking a different language? And I think somewhere down deep, we know we're doing it, but we're just so, we're just kind of over it that we'd rather say these things that we know are generalizing other people. Anyways, it just dawned on me that we don't actually have the relational tools to zoom out and understand where we're going wrong with all of this and why the problem isn't just that we disagree, but that we don't want to hear and listen to each other to see if we do agree. And just talking politics can have you going in circles, round and round and round and round and round. So I shifted. And I really want to get at what's broken in society that has literally gutted our relational capabilities. And I mean, like, this murdered our ability to be rational and reasonable with each other and to see each other with a lens of consideration and understanding. So I've turned my podcast towards deeper one-on-one conversations that unpack the human experience. And I've also shifted in my personal coaching work, towards relationship and communication coaching to address these very issues. And, I followed up with a listener once who had listened to a couple episodes of the Table Exchange. And he said to me, well, I don't get it because by the end of it, no one convinced me, And, I said to him, well, the Table Exchange is not meant to change your mind. And it's certainly not meant to get you to some unattainable middle ground, which I don't often think is helpful. It was meant to just champion a way to handle people with care while we disagree. And I still think that's a beautiful sentiment, but I think there's a better way to do it. And so I'm in social skills mode, and I'm running hard with the relational framework stuff that I've created and designed to kind of restore the social skills that we've lost, especially drastically since COVID, and to try to mature us and heal the way we engage. And just the truth is, when we depoliticize that work is so much easier. And yeah, I still do work in political dialogue, but if we can restore how we see each other, not just as people who oppose each other, but people of value with complex life stories, then I think that'll spill over into the political world. Now, a few people have come up to me and tried to guess as to why I stopped doing the Table Exchange episodes, and their guesses have always had to do with my personal opinions. Oh, you've changed. Now, whenever you play the role of moderator, you get hit from both sides. And so I had conservative people angry that I wasn't being conservative enough. I had progressive people angry that I wasn't being progressive enough. And to be very clear, I'm still the exact same opinionated, nuanced piece that I have always been. And my personal thoughts on how I see the world, they come from a spiritual lens. And so in that, I'm not here to make people feel comfortable or validated. It's just not what I'm doing. But let me actually tell you the hardest part about shifting my focus. The hardest part is that I am still extremely passionate about current events. And so I see things on the news and I'm like, man, I so want to make a post about this. Oh, this is so angering. I just want to vent. And it's like, I recognize now that for the reconciliatory work that God has called me to do, I've had to sacrifice that, and it has been a big sacrifice because I have a lot to say about every major news story, but I just kind of limit that to my personal relationships and my one-on-one conversations, because it's really important that this work reach people of all beliefs, opinions, and backgrounds because we all need it. I call my workshops heart oil changes because we're really digging into what's underneath the surface, our attitudes, our mindsets, and the patterns that need tuning. And in fact, the better method, which is the relational framework that I created, that I train with, it's 6 modules, and it starts with authenticity, which is let's just strip it all away and be real with one another. Forget cancel culture, forget political correctness. If we don't really know where we're starting, if we're not willing to be honest about what we're dealing with, then we can't go anywhere from there. So it starts with authenticity, and then it moves into embracing discomfort. Basically, how do we avoid avoidance? Because we're a society that's just steeped in avoidance. And so we're never dealing with the real issue. Moving on to self-awareness, because only about 10 to 15% of society is actually self-aware, even though majority of us think we are. So how do we build that so that we can actually move the needle in our interactions? And then self-regulation. Overreactivity is literally killing us. It's literally killing us, and many of us don't recognize those patterns in our own responses. So we deal with that, and then we move on to empathy, which is on massive decline. I mean, we've dropped like 40% since the 70s, and then another 20% just since COVID, and it's worse in Gen Z. So we've got to deal with this because each generation loses more and more of these skills. And then finally, risk management, which is knowing when to hold your peace, knowing when it's just not worth it. And in putting these 6 together, I mean, honestly, this was completely divinely inspired. This method, I can sit here and honestly say that God and I built this together as a pathway forward towards healing, no matter what the setting. So I know it works. I've seen it work, and I'm excited because the fall is starting to get busy. I have some church trainings coming up, and I don't know if they're open to the public. If they are, I'll make sure to comment on another podcast episode. But I just created a new course called A Culture of Grace, where I go in and help teams deepen their trust and foster, grace-filled collaboration so they can enrich their relationships with each other and their impact on their church community, especially in the era of church hurt. It's so important for us to be well seasoned in how we deal with others. And of course, I still have my Rooted in Reaching course, which is teaching congregants how to engage well with the secular world around them to have influence and impact. And so I'll actually be speaking on that next Saturday at the Philadelphia Council of Clergy Ministry Leaders Summit. That's September 20th, not this Saturday, but next. So if you're interested in being there, you can go to phillyclergy.com/summit. But all the other work still continues. My company culture training to help organizations establish a healthy work culture. In fact, I just began offering internal coaching to organizations where employees are struggling on the job due to emotional trauma. This is new, and it's been really fulfilling. Guys, let me tell you, people are really struggling since COVID, whether it's because of family deaths or physical illness or just trauma. People are really struggling just to make it till 5 p.m. What more? Meet deadlines and produce quality work. So I've been really enjoying walking with people through a holistic approach to executive coaching that really takes into account emotional healing and emotional growth. So anyways, there's a lot going on. Do me a favor, find us on Instagram, YouTube, and Threads at Set the Table Official. Social media is a tricky world. After we closed our Gathering Place account and started fresh with Set the Table, we're really just kind of starting all over again. So we're trying to grow our impact in this work. And so it would be very, very helpful if you follow, especially on Instagram, and interact with us there. And if you have your footprint more in the corporate world, I am personally on LinkedIn at Peace Ike Connects. Finally, don't sleep on what's going on at setthetable.org. We're literally all of our work lives, all of our curriculums, training, courses, and offerings. I have 7 comprehensive workshops now, and there's something for everyone. So let's just start to heal some of this stuff and heal the way we see and interact with each other. I'm telling you guys, I believe we can do this. So grace and peace to you, and let's keep setting the table for a healthier, more whole society. I'll see you later.